This is Rihanna Kelver, a resident of Laramie, Wyoming. Recently, the New York Times wrote an article regarding an incident where Ms. Kelver was charged with aggravated assault. Gun-friendly Wyoming has a stand your ground statute that allows people to use force to defend themselves. So why is a trans woman being prosecuted after being shoved to the ground? The New York Times desperately wants you to believe that this is a story about a conservative transphobic state weaponizing the law against a marginalized person. But let's look at the actual facts of what happened. One night last September, Miss Kelver, 28, drew her gun after she had been pushed down in the street during a brief confrontation with three men in the college town of Laramie, according to police reports and surveillance video. Wyoming's Stand Your Ground law is supposed to offer legal protections to gun owners who draw in self-defense. Yet Miss Kelver was arrested and charged with aggravated assault and possession with a deadly weapon with unlawful intent, charges that carry up to 15 years in prison. Because, spoiler alert, this isn't a Stand Your Ground case. On September 13th, she had felt uneasy after being harassed by an acquaintance, she said, so she tucked her gun into her hip when she left for a night shift at the Crowbar and Grill, a pizza and beer spot where banners for Black Lives Matter and LGBTQ rights hang beside the American flag. Miss Kelver said she had 2 shots at the bar, then went outside to smoke a cigarette before her shift at about 10 p.m. One man in a group of 3 shouted a profanity directed at the Crowbar, according to court records. Okay, so words were yelled at a building. Not exactly a mortal threat justifying deadly force. Miss Kelver said that the man, Scott Durham, also yelled an anti-gay slur, though he denied that to the police. Which, even if true, it's still just words. Someone yelling an insult from a distance doesn't give you the right to confront them while packing heat. According to police reports, Miss Kelver, upset, walked up to the men and asked, "What did you just say?" And there it is. So Ms. Kelver, possibly drunk and armed with a weapon, decided to approach them to escalate that situation. Surveillance video from a downtown camera shows her walking into the street towards the men, one hand on her hip by the pack that held the gun. Seconds later, Mr. Durham pushed her away, and Miss Kelver stumbled and fell onto her back. Wait, stop right there. She walked into the street towards the men with her hand hovering over the gun. She initiated the confrontation. If you aggressively approach a group of men in the street while grabbing at your waistband, getting pushed away isn't an unprovoked attack. It's a completely predictable reaction to your aggression. You can't claim stand your ground when you're the one going out of your way to start a fight. The moment she hit the pavement, she drew and racked the gun and pointed it. She did not fire. The 3 men walked away, and Miss Kelver got up and collected her belongings that had scattered into the street. The encounter was over in about 10 seconds. Note how the New York Times suggests that she racked the gun and then they walked away. But in reality, they were already walking away as she racked the gun. Hell, they barely reacted. And this brings us to Wyoming's Stand Your Ground law, which the New York Times doesn't even bother to understand. The law does not protect the person who starts the fight. If a person provokes the conflict or is the initial aggressor, they generally cannot claim Stand Your Ground protections unless they clearly attempt to withdraw from the encounter and the other party continues the attack. In other words, you can't aggressively march up to a group of people, instigate a physical altercation, and then claim you're standing your ground when they shove you away. So obviously, Stand Your Ground does not apply here. Instead, Ms. Kelver is being charged with aggravated assault. Wyoming State Statute 6-2-502, subsection A, sub 3. A person is guilty of aggravated assault and battery if they threaten to use a drawn deadly weapon on another unless reasonably necessary in defense of his person, property, or abode, or to prevent serious bodily injury to another. Note that key phrase, unless reasonably necessary. Drawing, racking, and pointing a loaded firearm at 3 guys whose backs are turned to you because they are walking away is the exact opposite of reasonably necessary. I had to defend myself, said Miss Kelver, who transitioned as a high schooler in Laramie and has been an outspoken activist for trans rights. I don't know how it wasn't reasonable, given the dangers and threats trans people hear every day. It wasn't reasonable because they were walking away. Your general feeling of danger in society doesn't give you a license to point a loaded gun at someone in the street after you picked the fight with them. Furthermore, the threat was over. They were leaving. Miss Kelver says she would have not been charged if she had been a biological female shoved to the ground by a group of men. Absolute nonsense. If a biological female downed 2 shots, walked into the street to confront 3 men with her hand on a gun, got pushed over, and then racked a pistol as they walked away, she'd be charged with aggravated assault. It's almost like the law applies to your actions and not your gender identity. Oh man, this video's never gonna get monetized. They're charging Rihanna because she's a trans woman, said Nicole Bondurant, a high school teacher. Gun rights don't say you have to fit a political affiliation. Neither do aggravated assault charges. But the New York Times conveniently glosses over some massive holes in Kelver's story. Let's look at what the local Laramie reporter had to say about what she initially told police. In her first interview with police, Kelver claimed she had pulled a knife, not a gun, from her bag. Wait, a knife? How do you confuse a gun with a knife? Kelver said she had attempted to pull a knife from their pocket, but dropped it when she hit the ground, the affidavit alleges. Kelver described the knife as black with a silver blade, purchased from Pole Mountain Pharmacy. Kelver stated the knife was a folding type with a spring hinge, and that the blade never fully extended before it fell from their hand. So Kelver told police that she pulled the knife from her bag and remembered the specific detail that the blade never fully extended, when in fact she had pulled a gun and racked it. Kelver told the Laramie reporter she was confused when she initially told the officer she had pulled a knife rather than a gun. Kelver maintains that when she told police she had pulled a knife, she earnestly believed that she had done so, and that she had corrected her statement upon double-checking her bag, seeing the pistol there, and realizing that she had pulled her gun instead of her knife. Yeah, that excuse doesn't sound remotely credible and is an insult to everyone's intelligence, which is why Kelver is also facing a misdemeanor charge for lying to the police. And of course, the media is doing everything they can to paint her as the victim. Kelver said she only had a gun on her person that night because of a stalking situation she had been dealing with. Yeah, sure. Okay. Miss Kelver said she rejected a plea deal that would have spared her from jail time, but stripped away her gun rights. She is set to go to trial in November. So instead of taking a deal for 0 jail time, she's choosing to roll the dice at a trial where the jury will watch a video of her pointing a loaded weapon at retreating men and then hear exactly how she lied to the cops about it. That's some bold strategy. I'm not going to roll over, she said. I'd rather lose fighting. I mean, rejecting a plea deal to save your gun rights is going to be really ironic when you end up with a felony conviction that not only strips you of your gun rights, but also puts you in prison for a decade. My hope initially is that the truth of the situation prevails. My hope is that I am found not guilty and that we get to pursue genuine justice for what happened to me. The truth of the situation. You mean the truth where you lied to police about having a spring-hinged knife instead of a handgun? Or the truth where you aggressively approached 3 guys, got shoved, and then aimed a loaded firearm at their backs as they walked away? Because if the actual truth prevails, you're looking at up to 15 years in prison. Because a surveillance camera doesn't care about your politics, the law doesn't care about your gender identity, and the jury isn't gonna buy your magical shape-shifting pocket knife story. Now, before I go, I would ask if you haven't watched this video right here. It's because a certain video platform isn't recommending it to you for reasons. So please check it out if you haven't seen it, and hope to see you next time, if there is next time.